All right. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all today. Like Mikhail was saying, I'm going to be giving a talk about purpose today. About purpose, we can say purpose-driven life, right? That's the title of my talk. So, I don't know how you all feel, but I think there's quite a crisis in purpose or meaning in today's society. Like, I think a lot of people are not really sure about what their purpose is, about what's the meaning of life, right? This is the big question, right? Like, this is Mikhail asked me to give you this talk on purpose. So this is like a massive talk. This could be like a week-long lecture series, like a year-long seminar, like a whole kind of semester. But to get in 20 minutes is kind of a challenge, but I'll try my best. And I think, there's this issue where a lot of people are not really sure what their purpose is, right? And it's a very important question. It's a very, very important question because it affects our lives completely, right? And I'm not saying I know the answer, ultimately, right? But I just want to share, dude, I know the purpose of life, kind of thing, right? But I just kind of want to share a little bit from my own experience, some of the things I've realized and some of the things I've learned, and that can maybe hopefully help you think more about your own purpose as well. Yeah. So, let's start first with purposelessness. Yes, that's right. Okay, meaninglessness, right? Let's start with that. Because I think if we look at when we feel meaningless, maybe we can figure out how to feel meaningful, right? So when do you guys feel like, oh, this is meaningless? Do you ever feel like that sometimes? Like, oh, this is really, I have no idea what I'm doing here. This is really meaningless. Does anyone feel like that before? When do you feel like that? Like, what situations? Not clear where you're going.
Whether it's,
yeah.
If you're with a group of people and it's all
Disorganized. Jonathan's a very organized person, it seems like. Good, get organized. I'd agree as well. I was thinking myself, okay, when do I kind of feel meaningless or purposelessness? I don't even know if that's a word. Anyway, and I was thinking, okay, maybe if you're in a relationship, right, with a significant other or something like that, and you feel that relationship's going nowhere, right, like Mikhail was saying, and you feel kind of it's stagnating, you're not feeling value from it anymore. It's not as exciting as it was at the beginning, right? Or you maybe not feeling that love that was there when you first started the relationship, right? Then you feel like, well, this relationship is just empty, it's kind of meaningless. Or another time, maybe if you're with a group of friends, but you just feel like it's really superficial. Has anyone had that feeling before? Hey, come in. How's it going? What's up? Has anyone had that feeling before when they're just maybe with a group of friends and you're just having kind of really sort of shallow conversation and you're sitting there amongst everyone, you're like, what am I doing here? Has anyone felt like that before? Like, this is really superficial, this is meaningless. Why am I discussing the Kardashians or whatever, maybe another one, a lot of times I think most of us here, university students going to school, we want to go into university because we want to find answers perhaps to our lives. So we want to study things, we want to get answers, we want to get more clued up and more clear in life. But that's not always the case. Maybe you feel like your university course is kind of making things more confusing. You're not sure that what you're learning, what you're reading is really helping you to find meaning. It's just it doesn't seem to fit with your life. It's kind of irrelevant and you're not finding those answers you're looking for, right? Or perhaps if you're in a job, right? And I think probably a lot of working people perhaps experience this. They're in a job, they're working, maybe they earn a decent salary, but they don't find fulfillment. They don't find it rewarding. They don't feel like they're going anywhere. They're just part of this huge corporate structure, right? And then they feel like, well, what am I really contributing? This is I'm just kind of a tiny cog making money for someone else. And I feel like I'm not I'm not able to express who I am, right? I just feel kind of like another one of these kind of lab rats in the rat race, right? So perhaps those things are where we feel meaningless, yeah. But I think it's important to think about, okay, these things perhaps are connected. This is what I was thinking about. These things are connected to a form of unhappiness, right? In all these situations, we feel unhappy with our situation. We feel unhappy with what's going on, right? Like, I'm not happy because the relationship I'm in or the work I'm in is causing me unhappiness, yeah. But what kind of happiness are we talking about here? Like, I think it's really important to explore happiness, right? Because, okay, in these situations of feeling unhappy, what others, what about, like, I think if we think about those situations, they're more like kind of, we don't feel fulfilled in a sense, right? I think we can when we start to think about happiness, I think we can divide things up into, follow my thinking here, and I'm not sure if you thought about this, but we can divide things up into kind of short-term and more like long-term happiness, yeah? So, we can feel unhappy in other ways, right? Not just about my life and things like that. Has anyone felt like really annoyed at themselves when they've like binge watched a load of YouTube videos? Has anyone felt annoyed at themselves? Like, I don't think anyone's ever felt like, man, I just watched 1 hour of who's the best footballer, Messi or Ronaldo, and it was amazing. Like, that was an hour well spent, Usually I like, if I do that, I watch like an hour of YouTube videos and watched all the links, and I kind of forget what I'm doing, what I'm supposed to be doing, right? And I came on for a totally different reason. After, I felt like that was really bad, right? But whilst I'm watching them, the point I'm trying to make, maybe whilst you're watching all these videos, actually it's quite good. It's quite funny, like you're enjoying yourself. But only at the end do you feel like, oh, that was a waste of time, right? Do you know what I'm saying? Right? And I think that's perhaps the difference between short-term and longer-term happiness, right? Is you can do something that can bring you sort of, maybe you could say pleasure, right? It's kind of fun, it's kind of nice while it lasts, but when it finishes, then you feel, actually not really happy with those decisions I made, right? Does anyone feel like that? I think everyone's felt like that, right? Especially watching YouTube videos. But on the other hand, long-term happiness, maybe going back to my original examples, those are more to do with long-term happiness. Would you agree? Do you guys agree with that? Like, really, like, if you don't agree, you'd be like, I don't agree. Put your hand up, like, no. But I think that's probably true from what I figured out, what I feel like is true. And so I think we can identify a few areas, right? If we look at my first examples, perhaps the first one is a lot to do with communication, right? Having good communication, like for example in relationships, right? Really being able to communicate and have good relationships. Another example is, I was talking about university, really understanding oneself, right? Coming to understand my life and who I am, truly, right? And perhaps the other one, like when I was giving that example about work, it's more about serving society. Like, I don't think anyone likes to feel like their work is meaningless and like doesn't contribute to anything, right? I think work that is meaningful is something that contributes to society. I think it has an effect to help people. So there's a kind of a sense of service there, right? Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. But of course, those also have to be kind of in sync with your interests, with the things that you enjoy doing, right? Your work, if you don't enjoy, being a musician, and you try to be a musician and make other people happy, but you don't enjoy, you're not good at it, of course, it's not going to find fulfillment, right? So, yeah. I think through these three things, that's what I was thinking about. Looking at the cases of when we feel no meaning, and kind of going backwards from that, I think communications and relationships, understanding oneself, developing oneself, and serving others are three main ways that if we focus on, maybe we can start to discover our purpose, right? And human flourishing in that way. Myself, I came from a religious background, right? And so I grew up with kind of a teaching about how to find purpose and where we find purpose in life, right? And these center around actually quite similar things to what I was mentioning before, like developing myself, growing myself, maturing myself. Secondly, creating really good relationships, a good family, right? Having a good community with kind of healthy and growing relationships, developing relationships. And thirdly, making my own unique contribution to the world. Yeah, and in a sense, if you think about it, a lot of times the religious perspective is that, well, if you have something, for example, let's if you have a computer, right, then what is the purpose of that computer? What do you think? What is the original purpose? Who determines the original purpose of that computer? The creator. Yeah, I think that's kind of obvious, right? So the creator creates the purpose. The computer decides the purpose of the computer, right? So so then for myself, kind of from my religious background, that's where I'm coming from. That in a sense, the creator, or my creator, has given me these intended purposes, right? But yeah, maybe the militant atheists are now like, I disbelieve every single thing you said before, right? But I think what I was saying before about meaninglessness and trying to understand that and understand where we find meaning still applies, whether you believe in like a creator or a God or not, whether you're religious or not. I think actually they apply. It still applies. It's still relevant, right? The fact, like it doesn't. I don't think it. Even if you didn't believe you were created, those things still matter in your life, right? Service and relationships and understanding oneself. So in the end, like I was thinking about it, and at its core, religion is really just a lot of wisdom generated over generations, right? Of course, it's more than that, right? But if you go past the dogma, there's a lot of wisdom there. And I was looking up some things, preparing for this talk, right? And I saw like a really cool video from the Dalai Lama, right? And he was talking about compassion, right? He was talking about actually through compassion, that's how we find purpose, right? When we're able to be compassionate for every single thing, and it becomes, in a sense, an unconditional compassion, right? It goes beyond other people's attitudes. It doesn't matter how anyone else treats me, right? What their attitude is. If I'm still able to be compassionate, just because they're all beings, they're all sentient beings, right? Like me, then that's when I find real satisfaction. Right? And I was thinking about that, and I was like, yes, that's, I agree with that. It's really wise. I'm not a Buddhist or something, right? But I agree with that wisdom, right? And I think that comes back to what I was saying at the beginning about service, right? I think, do you see my kind of line logic here, right? So, yeah. But anyway, despite these, perhaps, things I may believe from my own religious background, I still think, for me and perhaps for all of us, we have to decide what gives us purpose. We have to find our purpose, right? We have to decide our purpose in life. In a sense, we have to make our meaning, right? People can give us all kinds of different ideas, right? But we have to decide how we're going to live, in a sense, right? So in my own life, actually, it's a question I've been thinking about a lot, for like a lot of my life, actually. Perhaps it was because of the way I was raised, but I was always thinking about, what am I going to do with my life? Like, how can I make my life a good life? Right? What kind of life do I subscribe to? What kind of values do I subscribe to? And how can I find purpose, right? A lot of times, whilst I was growing up, I felt like, maybe someone will tell me this. Someone's got to have the answer that will come up to me and be like, this is your purpose, Samuel. Now go and have an amazing life, kind of thing, right? But of course, that that never happened, right? I don't think it's ever going to happen, right? People can come up with, people can give you all kinds of different advice. You can read all kinds of things, but in the end, it's down to you to make your life, right? To decide what is meaningful and where that meaning comes from, right? So, as I've grown up, I've come to realize that, and come to realize that I really need to understand myself and understand my own worldview, right? Because, no one else is going to tell me. I need to decide what I'm going to do with what I have in life, yeah? So, I think this is a really important question, like, what is your worldview, because it makes a difference what you believe in, actually, right? If I said before, right at the beginning, maybe these three things are kind of keys to meaning, right? Service, understanding oneself, relationships. But if you don't believe that, if you don't incorporate that in your worldview, then it's not going to make a difference, because it's not going to affect your behavior, right? Your worldview and what you believe really does affect how you live in the end, right? If you believe, I think contributing with my life is going to make me, in the end, happy. Even though it's like challenging, maybe it's challenging to go out there and do good for others. But if you believe ultimately, in the end, it's going to bring you fulfillment, then you're going to do it anyway. But if you don't really believe that, if you're like, well, I don't think so, then of course you're not going to take that path, right? It's quite obvious. So, what is the good life to you? I want to ask you that question. What is the good life to you? Is it about a lot of people, and I think we all fall into this. I definitely fall into this sometimes. We think about it's about looking good, right? Or maybe feeling good. Perhaps a lot of people follow their feelings. What feels good, or having the goods, right? What kind of things do you have? What car do you have? What kind of job do you have? I don't know, I think I'm sure we all kind of follow that thinking sometimes, right? But I kind of want you to, what I'm putting out there is question that. Like, it's quite a normal way to think that way, because our society is quite obsessed with how you look and, kind of doing what you feel. It's all about feelings these days. Don't hurt other people's feelings. I'm going to do what I feel is, right, or having, lots of material things. Society thinks a lot like that, but I guess what I'm saying is, perhaps we need to question that, right? Is that my worldview? Is that the correct worldview that's going to bring me true fulfillment, right, and true purpose? Yeah. So, I'm going to get a little bit meta here, right? And I think you need to think about what I feel like I've discovered is that we need to really look deep into who we are, right? To understand how to find this fulfillment. We're not just the labels that we have, right? If you know what I mean by that, we're not just, I'm a graduate, but that label of a graduate doesn't define me, right? You're not just a student, right? Or you're not just your salary, right? Or whatever your career you have, right? These kind of labels that people put on you try to define you. You're not just that, right? You're much more than that. You're much deeper than that, right? And your meaning transcends these labels, right? Do you get what I'm saying? So, also meaning is not, I don't think meaning and purpose is something that's like in the future or, in the past. Or, I think there's a lot to be said about living in the present moment and appreciating the present moment, where we can find purpose and meaning, and kind of fulfillment. So there's this great quote from Eckhart Tolle. Has anyone heard of Eckhart Tolle? Eckhart Tolle. I don't know how to pronounce the last name, but and he says, your entire life consists of the present moment. Your life is never not this moment. And I was like, whoa. When I heard that, I was like, damn, that's pretty meta. That's pretty good, right? And if you think about it that way, it's very true. A lot of time we're very obsessed with the future. A lot now. At the moment, as a graduate, I'm looking for jobs, I'm thinking about my future career, all these kind of things. And it's very easy to start obsessing over these things, start worrying over these things, and start actually losing the present moment to those things, right? Or even to the past, having regrets about what you didn't do, or thinking about perhaps what you should have done, or all these kind of things that we're very familiar with. We've all felt, right? But I think there's a lot to be said about really living in the present moment and understanding that we need to develop a kind of appreciation and learning how to live now without worrying too much about the future or the past, right? And how does that connect in with the good life, right? Because I was talking about happiness originally, and I think it matters a lot, what our worldview is, what we think is the good life, and how to live in the present moment in understanding how to find long-term happiness, like fulfillment, right? We can define, I know I said like pleasure and fulfillment, there's a difference there, right? Instead of just feeling pleasurable because, you did something, that's kind of fun for the present moment, but maybe something you regret, think about how can I do things that are long-lasting, right? And I think one thing to think about is how do I understand what things are fulfilling, is to think about, well, when you die, right? When you're on your deathbed, what is the most important thing to you? I saw this really interesting article where it was talking about people who were very old, and probably, soon, I think it was like people on their deathbed or something like that. I can't remember the exact title of the article, but it was saying what things did they think they should have done more of, or what things did they regret? And it was very interesting because there was a lot of common themes. A lot of them said, I shouldn't have worked so hard just pursuing a career. I should have spent more time with people that I loved, doing things that I enjoy with those people. And that makes a lot of sense when you think about it, right? When we start to think more deeply, try to think past these labels, or try to think past kind of, superficial, short-term sort of pleasure, right? It starts to make sense. Actually, yeah, relationships, right? Working towards things that are meaningful, not just working, just kind of as a cog in a big system, making money just for the sake of it. Yeah. So, yeah. Think about real happiness. That's what I'm trying to say. And what is that? How do we attain that? So try not to be. I feel like what I've learned is I don't want to be drawn towards kind of short-term happiness, even though it can be very kind of attractive at times. You want to spend a couple hours watching some of those funny cat videos, but in the long run it's never going to help, right? It's not going to help you get anywhere, right? Of course, maybe explicitly sometimes you want to spend time watching YouTube videos. That's fine. That's cool, right? But I think what I'm saying, right? Try not to do things where you feel like they compromise what you really feel like is the good life and what your worldview is about in trying to attain real fulfillment, right? Don't compromise those long-term goals for just short-term thinking, right? So, in the end, I think probably the real test is of what is short-term and perhaps the difference between short-term and long-term happiness is, of course, like I said, think about on your deathbed, what is the most important thing? But I think it also comes down to, in the end, and maybe it sounds very cliched, maybe it does, but I really think it's true from what I've experienced, is that it's about the love you have and the love you can give, right? So going all the way back to the beginning, right? In growing and developing myself, understanding myself, right? I'm learning to love and value myself, right? And I'm learning how to give love. In then developing relationships, meaningful relationships, family, community, I'm learning how to give and receive love, right? Like I'm learning how to show love to others, right? And then in the wider society, learning, contributing and serving others, I'm doing that as well, but just on a bigger level, right? With what I'm accomplished in my life, I'm kind of spreading that kind of influence of love that I'm able to build up in myself, right? If that makes sense, and affect others in that loving way. So that sounds kind of cliche, but I really think it's true. I really do. Like, Totally. So, yeah, I think here in CARP, like, I think what's really important is that we try to think about our purpose deeply, right? How do we find meaning? What is my worldview? What to me is a good life, and how can I find this fulfillment? Yeah, and discover my own unique purpose. Yeah, because I think all of us have an amazing kind of, amazing ability, potential, capability to do a lot in society, and I guess express ourselves in our own unique way, and we need to find that. I think we need to really work on ourselves. Like, that's something I only really started to discover maybe in my 20s, that I need to really analyze and learn about myself and who I am, right? And then I can utilize who I am to find meaning in what I do. Understand my strengths, understand how I can give to others, how I can contribute, right? Yeah, and then we can make choices, right? Once we define our purpose, we can start to make those choices that help us go towards our purpose, right? Help us reach that purpose. So, yeah, I guess, hopefully that wasn't too long. But, yeah, I just want to end, on those points. Understanding myself, my strengths, my passions, and pursuing those, and not being afraid to do so. Don't be kind of led by fear that, you're not good enough, or, you're not strong enough, or whatever, you fear of failure, all these kind of things that affect us sometimes. And think about all those things that we've been given. And I think in the end, that's essential to discovering our, self-discovery and discovering our purpose and how to lead a fulfilling life. So, yeah. Thanks very much.